Okay, so we all know the data center industry. It's booming, right? It's
Yeah.
powering like everything we do online these days. But here's something that might surprise you.
What's that?
In a lot of data center roles, women are only represented in the single digits.
Yeah, it's a massive gender gap.
Huge EE.
Definitely something worth exploring. And it's not just about filling quotas.
Right.
The exciting part is that there's so much potential out there.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of women would be amazing in this field.
Yeah.
But there are roadblocks everywhere, from how we talk about data centers to the lack of support they get within companies.
That's exactly what I thought was so interesting about this 8-step plan from Amber Villegas-Williamson.
Okay.
She's a senior technical consultant at Uptime Institute.
Uh-huh.
And she shared it on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And it's full of like real world examples. It's not just like nice sounding theories.
Yeah, I think it gets right to the core of the issue. How do we actually attract more women to this industry and then create a culture where they can thrive?
Yeah, so let's dive into Amber's plan. Step 1 is all about awareness and outreach. And I think you might be thinking, well, duh, that's obvious.
Right.
But Amber kind of goes a little bit deeper, and she highlights something that really made me think.
Okay.
She points to Tech UK's Invisible Internet Zone back in 2021.
Uh-huh.
It was this awesome initiative that showcased all these really cool jobs in data centers, but it was only a one-time thing. Can you imagine if we had these kinds of events happening all the time?
It really brings up that you can't be what you can't see thing.
Right.
If young women never see themselves represented in data centers,
Yeah.
they're probably not even going to consider it as a career option.
And it's not just about like, having some fancy event in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Amber really focuses on reaching students in more remote areas, especially the ones who might not have access to like STEM events or role models. And this part actually made me a little skeptical at first. Like, how do you even start to deal with that?
Well, that's where science capital comes into play. Think of it as the more exposure you have to science and tech while you're growing up, the more likely you are to see yourself in that world.
Mm-hmm.
But that exposure needs to be equitable. Amber even suggests that companies should offer paid time off for employees to volunteer at STEM events,
Wow.
especially in under-resourced schools.
So they're offering paid time off to go do that.
That's the idea.
Now that's putting your money where your mouth is.
Right. It's not just good PR. It's a way to directly build that pipeline of future talent.
Yeah, it's win-win. Employees get to share what they're passionate about, the companies show they're committed, and then the students get that exposure to STEM fields.
Oh.
Okay, so we've got to get the word out there. But awareness is only the first step. Amber's next point is all about language.
Oh, okay.
And this one really hit home for me
Yeah.
because she's talking about those sneaky ways that bias creeps into how we talk every day.
Mm-hmm.
Not even just in job postings, but like in all of our communication.
Yeah.
She even told a story about a LinkedIn post she saw that just casually assumed that a car mechanic would be a man.
It's those tiny assumptions that really make a difference.
Yeah.
Using gender-neutral language makes a more welcoming environment for everyone.
Right.
And it's not just about being politically correct. Like, there's actual data that backs this up.
Yeah, she had some really interesting examples. OpenReach is a telecom company over in the UK. They saw a 200% increase in women applying for jobs
Wow.
just by changing how they wrote the job ads.
Just from the wording.
Just from the wording. Think about that.
Yeah.
They tripled the number of women applying.
That's amazing. It makes you wonder what kind of talent we're missing out on just because of the language we're using.
Okay, so awareness and language are definitely important, but they're really just the foundation. Amber's next step is about building a supportive workplace culture. And this is where things get really interesting.
Okay.
She says it goes way beyond just having a diversity policy that sits in a drawer somewhere.
Right.
It's got to be about actually creating a culture where everyone feels valued and respected and empowered to succeed.
Absolutely. And this is where leadership is so important.
Yeah, it's not enough to just talk the talk. Leaders have to actually walk the walk.
Yeah.
But this is where Amber brings in something that might surprise you. She actually connects all of this back to the bottom line, to the financial benefits of diversity.
Oh, interesting.
She talks about this McKinsey report that says that if women had full economic equality, it could add $28 trillion to the global economy by 2025.
$28 trillion.
$28 trillion.
Does that really apply to the data center world?
I had the same thought.
Yeah.
But then I started to think about it like this. What if you have a more diverse team at a data center company?
Okay.
And they're looking at a project that everyone else is on board with. Let's say it's a multi-million-dollar expansion, but it's just not well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
A team where everybody's the same might just go along with it.
Right.
But a team with a bunch of different perspectives and backgrounds might be more likely to speak up. And if they're right, that's millions of dollars saved because they had those different viewpoints.
That's a great point. It really shows what we lose when we don't have diversity. It's not just about fairness, it's about making better decisions and coming up with new ideas, and in the end, getting better results for the business.
So diversity isn't just a feel-good thing.
Yeah.
It's actually a smart business move.
It is, and Amber doesn't stop there. She emphasizes flexible work policies and mentorship programs as being super important too.
Flexibility is huge, especially now when so many people are working remotely.
Exactly. And let's be honest, mentorship programs can make or break someone's career, especially if they're underrepresented in the field. Having that extra support and guidance can make all the difference.
Okay, so we've gone over the first 4 steps of Amber's plan.
Okay.
We talked about raising awareness, using inclusive language, building a supportive culture, and even touched on how diversity can help the bottom line.
Now think about your career for a sec. What helped you get to where you are? It's likely someone saw something and you gave you a chance, maybe even opened some doors. And that's exactly what mentorship and sponsorship are about.
Yeah.
And it's especially important for women in these male-dominated fields.
Yeah, I've definitely had some fantastic mentors over the years, people who believed in me even when I didn't. But what exactly is the difference between a mentor and a sponsor?
So a mentor is more about advice, guidance, support. They're like your sounding board, someone you can turn to for feedback.
Right.
But a sponsor is different. A sponsor will actually go out and advocate for you, open doors, use their influence to get you ahead.
Wow, so they're not just talking to you, they're talking about you.
Exactly. And Amber really highlights this as being super important for keeping women in data centers.
Yeah, it makes
Where's
sense
Summer?
if you feel supported. If you see a path forward, you're more likely to stay at a company and feel like you belong.
Right.
Okay, so we've got awareness language, a supportive culture, and then this focus on mentorship and sponsorship. That's a pretty solid base. But what about connecting with the wider industry? That's where Amber's next step comes in, utilizing partnerships and resources.
She points to organizations like WISE, WEES, and Science Capital. They're amazing resources. They've got everything from training materials to networking events to support for companies who want to get better at diversity.
Yeah, it's like why start from scratch?
Yeah.
These groups have already done so much work.
They have the knowledge. They're ready to help.
Right.
And this is where collaboration is so important. When companies partner with these groups, they get access to all this support and knowledge. They don't have to figure it out on their own.
It's about working smarter, not harder.
Exactly.
And realizing that this isn't just one company's problem. It's a collective effort.
It really is. The more we share what works and learn from each other's experiences, the faster we can make the whole industry more inclusive.
Okay, so we're collaborating, we're building a supportive environment. But how do we actually know if it's working? Amber's next step is all about measuring progress and holding ourselves accountable.
This is where we see if our actions actually match our words.
Yeah.
It's easy to say you care about diversity, but are you actually measuring it? Are you tracking your progress? What gets measured gets improved right.
It's about going beyond good intentions and creating real change.
Exactly. And it's about using data to see where you can improve and if the things you're doing are actually working. Amber suggests using tools like the WISE 10-step framework to do diversity audits.
Okay.
It's a way for companies to see which areas they really need to focus on.
Like a checkup for your company's diversity.
Exactly. And it's about being open about your progress, both inside the company and publicly. By sharing your data and what you're learning, you're contributing to a more diverse and inclusive industry for everyone.
Okay, we're getting down to the last step of Amber's plan. And this is a big one, highlighting the business benefits of gender diversity. I feel like sometimes this gets lost in the conversation.
It's easy to get caught up in doing the right thing morally, which is super important. But businesses want to see results right.
Yeah.
And all the research shows that gender diversity leads to better financial performance, more innovation, and happier customers.
How does that actually work? It seems like kind of a jump.
Think of it this way. Diverse teams bring all sorts of different perspectives, experiences, and ideas. They're going to understand the needs of a diverse customer base better, and they're more likely to question things and come up with really new solutions.
It's not just about doing good, it's about being smart.
Exactly. Diversity just makes good business sense.
And it benefits society as a whole. When workplaces are more inclusive, we're creating a fairer world for everyone. Okay, so we've covered Amber's 8-step plan. But I want to zoom out for a minute. We've been talking about the data center world, but what about other industries? Could they learn from this too?
Absolutely. While data centers have their own unique challenges, what Amber's laid out is a fantastic model that could be adapted to any field.
Like, what are you thinking? Finance, Hollywood. They both have diversity problems.
Those are perfect examples. Even the finance world, with its reputation, is starting to see that more diverse investment teams lead to better returns.
hmm
And Hollywood, even though it's got a long way to go, is realizing that audiences want stories that represent the whole world, not just a tiny part of it.
So what can they learn from the data center world? Are there any strategies that stand out?
I think one of the most important things is setting clear goals and targets.
Right.
It's not enough to just say we want more diversity. You
Yeah.
have to define what that actually means, set measurable benchmarks, and then hold yourselves accountable.
It's like those diversity audits we were talking about.
Right. Data is crucial, but data by itself isn't enough. You have to create a culture where people from underrepresented groups actually feel welcome and valued.
That's where the hard work comes in, going beyond surface level changes and creating real systemic change.
Exactly. And that means addressing unconscious bias, supporting inclusive leadership, and giving everyone opportunities to succeed.
That brings us back to what Amber said about mentorship and sponsorship. It's not just about having women in the company, it's about helping them grow and advance.
Mentorship is important, but sponsorship is even more powerful. A mentor gives advice, but a sponsor actively fights for their mentee, opens doors for them, and promotes their career.
So it's about having people in power who are actually willing to use their influence to help others rise up.
Exactly. And it's not just about women supporting women.
Right.
We need male allies who are actively involved in promoting diversity and inclusion as well.
It's a team effort. Speaking of teams, you mentioned earlier that diverse teams get better results. Can you explain that more? What's the link between diversity and innovation?
Well, it's fascinating when you have a team with people from different backgrounds, experiences, and ways of thinking. You end up with a wider range of ideas and approaches to solve problems.
So you're less likely to get stuck in one way of doing things.
Exactly. A team where everyone is the same might be efficient, but they're also more likely to get stuck in groupthink and miss out on opportunities to innovate. Diversity forces you to question assumptions, push boundaries, and think outside the box.
That's where those aha moments happen, those breakthroughs that wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Exactly. And there's a lot of research now that shows a clear connection between diversity and innovation and better financial performance, too.
So it's not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do.
It is.
Diversity is good for business.
And it's good for society as a whole.
Yeah.
When we make workplaces more inclusive and fair, we're not just helping individuals, we're creating a better world for everyone.
I love that.
Oh.
But let's get back to data centers specifically. What are some of the unique challenges and opportunities when it comes to attracting and keeping women in this field?
One big challenge is how people see the industry. Data centers are often thought of as these cold, sterile, male-dominated places. We need to change that story.
So we've been talking about making the data center world more inclusive, and you've given some great insights into why that matters, not just for women, but for the whole industry. But I want to kind of shift gears a bit and look ahead. What's coming up for data centers, and how does that connect to this need for diversity?
Well, the data center world is definitely changing fast. There are all these new technologies coming out all the time. Like, think about edge computing. The demand for sustainability is growing.
And AI. It
Yeah.
feels like AI is going to be everywhere. How does that affect the need for diversity in data centers?
That's such an important question. AI systems are only as good as the data they learn from and the people who design them.
Right.
If those data sets or those teams aren't diverse enough, we risk building bias right into these technologies.
Wow. So it's not just about having more women working in data centers. It's about making sure their voices and perspectives are part of how those technologies are created in the first place.
Exactly. Otherwise, we could end up with AI systems that just keep making existing inequalities worse or create new ones.
That's a scary thought.
Mm.
So we need diverse teams to make sure AI is fair and helps everyone, not just a few. And this kind of goes back to something we talked about before about making a culture where everyone feels safe to speak up and question things.
Absolutely. Diversity without inclusion doesn't mean anything. We have to make an environment where everyone feels valued and respected and like they can contribute their ideas.
Yeah, because if you don't have that, you might miss some really important insights. Right? Someone might see a problem but not feel like they can say anything.
Exactly. With diversity, you get the whole picture, and that's how you build truly intelligent systems.
Okay, so we need inclusivity, both in terms of who's building the future of data centers and in how we design these technologies. But what about the skills themselves? What kind of talent will this industry need as we go forward?
Well, the technical skills are important, obviously, understanding cloud computing, cybersecurity, data analytics. But the soft skills are just as important. Things like communication, collaboration, problem solving, adaptability.
So it's not enough to just be good with tech. You have to be able to work with others and adapt to change. It sounds like being able to understand and connect with people is going to be as valuable as knowing how to code.
Exactly. And those are skills that we don't always pay enough attention to, especially in tech. But as AI gets more advanced, the human element becomes even more important. We need people who can connect technology and humanity, who understand the impact of these technologies and make sure they're used for good.
So it sounds like the future of data centers needs both technical expertise and the human-centered skills. It's not just about the machines, it's about the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as the need for data center professionals keeps growing, we have this chance to build a more diverse and inclusive workforce, one that really shows how rich and complex our world is. This isn't about checking boxes, it's about building a stronger industry that can face the challenges that are coming our way.
It's exciting to think about all the possibilities, but what about the potential problems?
Yeah.
What do we need to watch out for as we go forward? What could go wrong even if we had the best intentions?
Well, one thing I worry about is that this push for diversity could become just a checklist without a real commitment to making an inclusive culture.
Right.
We have to be careful about just doing things for show and focus on real deep change. It's not enough to hire a few more women and say, we're done.
It's not just about the numbers. It's about making a place where women can succeed and reach their full potential.
Yeah.
It's about making sure their ideas are heard and they have the same opportunities as everyone else.
Exactly. And it's about making sure there's diversity at every level of the organization, from entry level to the top. We need more women in leadership roles making the decisions that shape the future.
So we need to see women not just as employees, but as leaders, innovators, people with vision who can really change things in the industry.
Absolutely. And we also need to address unconscious bias, which can be a big obstacle to making a truly inclusive workplace.
Unconscious bias, can you remind us what that is and how it affects things at work?
Sure, unconscious bias is about those stereotypes and prejudices we have about certain groups of people without even knowing it. And those biases can affect who we hire, who gets promoted, how we treat each other every day.
So even when we think we're being fair, our unconscious biases can lead us to make decisions that are unfair to certain groups, like women in this case.
Exactly. It's a sneaky but really powerful kind of discrimination.
Yeah.
And it's hard to fight. But the first step is admitting that we all have biases, even if we don't want to.
So how do we start dealing with these unconscious biases both in ourselves and in our companies?
There are a lot of resources and trainings out there that can help people understand their biases and learn how to deal with them. It's also important to make a space where people feel comfortable talking about these things and questioning each other's assumptions.
So we have to go beyond just saying, I'm not racist or I'm not sexist. We have to be actively anti-racist and anti-sexist. We have to call out bias when we see it, even when it's hard.
Yes, it's about making a culture of accountability where everyone feels responsible for making things more inclusive.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of systemic change, addressing unconscious bias, and creating an inclusive culture. What else should we be thinking about as we look at the future of data centers?
I think it's important to remember that technology is a tool. It can be used for good or for bad, and the choices we make now will have a big impact on the future. We need to think carefully about the technologies we create and how we use them, always thinking about the ethics.
That's a good reminder. We have to make sure technology helps people, not the other way around.
Exactly. And that needs a diversity of thoughts, perspectives, experiences. We need people from all different backgrounds to be part of the conversation, questioning things and pushing the limits of what's possible.
Well said. Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive into the future of data centers, I want to leave our listeners with a sense of hope and possibility. Because despite all the challenges, there's so much we can do to make things better.
I agree. We're at the start of something big, and we have the chance to create a fairer future for everyone. It's up to us to make that happen.
So if you're listening and you're feeling inspired, what's one thing you can do today to make a difference? Maybe it's talking to a young woman, who likes STEM, or speaking up against bias at work.
Or maybe it's just learning more about these issues and deciding to be a more inclusive person. Every action, no matter how small, can help make a better future for all of us.
That's a great way to end things. Thanks for joining me today. This has been a really insightful conversation.
It has been.
And to everyone listening, thanks for being here. Remember, the future's in our hands. Let's build it together.
I'm with you.